experience, and we're really encouraged. The governor's made a point to run a very grassroots campaign. We've held 13 town halls around the state, so he's taking the tough questions from voters. We had 2 on Monday with some excellent questions across the gamut of issues, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen him this time or have never seen him, to come out and ask the questions that you care about. He's happy to answer any questions. We are nothing without volunteers as a grassroots campaign, and we'd love to get you involved. If you'd like to help us out, we're going to be, door-to-door phones. We have our first Super Saturday here this Saturday, so we're going to have a big push along with a number of other Saturdays until election, until the primary. But I appreciate you guys having me, and look forward to working with everybody more here in the future.
Great. Okay, just a call for any other new business that anyone might have. Anything that you want to bring up? Okay, with that done, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. We actually have 2 of the 3 who are listed here. Originally, I thought it was only going to be Ken, but we also have Mary Allen, who is the District 3 Division 3 Finance Chair. Are you a chair of?
Division 2 clerk.
Division, oh, okay.
She's Division 2. Tom was Division 3.
Okay, well, I think it's listed incorrectly on the...
We're here to correct
the House roster. It lists it the opposite. Okay, but anyway, I'd love to have you come on up here and address everyone, and you can fill us in on what's going on with the whole budgeting process. And I'll throw my question out to you right now, so you can talk about it whenever you want. We've been told that there's this, I think it's $23 million surplus, and I'm just wondering, is this a surplus that we believe is a surplus, or is it a surplus that the governor believes is a surplus?
I will answer the question by saying can I be heard without the mic? Because I like to hold things and pass them out. When I looked at the June end of the fiscal year revenue report, it shows us 44 million deficit, and it says cash unaudited basis. Now there was a plan. There's normally a plan that we lapse money that the people don't spend in their divisions, and so we were expecting 71 million in lapses. Supposedly, we have about 26 million more than that. However, the audit isn't complete till the end of this year, December 31st, when we publish what's called the CAFR, or the Consolidated Annual Financial Report, which is audited. And that may show a completely different thing, and by that time, we may have been handed a $35 million bill. And by showing that 44 million deficit at the end of the last fiscal year, then that would be money that all came out of the rainy day fund. So if there is 26 million, we'll find out later, and then the 35 million may come due at the same time. But anyway, I want to pass out the first couple things here. I think there's enough for everybody. There's this list, and then there's this list, and then I'll put some over the other side. The first thing is going out is a list of a letter that I sent out on the 1st.
Thank you. Do you mind if I pass these out?
That's what I'm hoping you will do, Steve. I think there's enough here to...
Thank you, sir.
I know, that one. All right, there's some more. We need more over here. You've all heard a lot of media reports of all the damage that we did to all the state infrastructure. The media are not very friendly. They like to publish anything negative about Republicans. That's why I'm delighted to be here in Belknap County, which is such a strong Republican county. I believe all your reps are Republicans?
All 18.
And all 18 of you. And in Rockingham County, I think we have 79 out of 90. So we always have a few from that evil place, Portsmouth, that get elected. But we hope they redistrict, because now I think 4 out of the 5 are all in one ward. So we may get rid of some of those. But anyway, the letter that I wrote, and it's important for you to point out to all your towns when they say, oh, what are you doing to us, is that the governor would have taken $155 million away from you. He was going to make cuts everywhere. He cut all the departments in the executive department, and then he was going to cut some more on the towns, the money we distributed to the town. He was going to vastly reduce the catastrophic aid. He was going to vastly reduce the building construction aid to schools. We restored all those monies in, and then the other thing that he was going to do, a few years ago, the last Republican budget, we were still giving 35% of the contribution that the counties and cities and towns make to the employee contributions for teachers, police, and fire. Not for the other employees, but teachers, police, and fire. The tradition for, I don't know, 30, 40 years was for the state to make the 35% contribution toward the employer's share. Now, we were fortunate that during the 90s, the retirement system did very well. So the flexibility was within the employer. So the employer's share was cut down to a small amount. The employee shares was kept at 7% for teachers, 9.25% for police, and 9.5% for firemen. Those were figures that were determined many years ago by the retirement board. And then the employer had their share varied by the amount of money that needed to go in when they made the computations to say, we have so much money coming in, we have so much money going out, so we expect the earnings from the fund to provide most of this, and the rest of it will go to build up the fund and also help pay for retirees. We had a bunch of people that were gaming the retirement system. There was a big story about 10 of them getting over $100,000 a year. Some of them were retiring at more money than they were paid when they were working full-time. Wow. Gaming the system. Police chiefs were some of the worst. If anybody's on overtime, I'm on overtime. Well, you're sitting home sleeping. That doesn't matter. I'm the police chief. I'm in charge. I have to take the blame. I want 100 hours this week. So when he retires at more money than he was earning on a regular 40-hour day. But he built it up the last 3 years. I was in a retirement system, and most of them averaged 5 years. So anyway, the retirement system, we were looking to restore the 25%, which the governor took away. In the last 2 budgets, it was roughly $46 million per year. So I said, where can we get that? And we met and we decided the thing to do was to increase. Here we have these huge increases, as you'll see on the second page of my letter there, how much, like for a fireman, the employers were paying 30.9%, while the fireman was paying, at the time, 9.3%. And with the police, the employers were paying 25.57%, and the policeman was paying 9.3%. With the teachers, who were paying 5%, the school districts were paying 13.95%. In each case, more than twice as much, almost 3 times as much, which didn't seem fair. In the private sector, if your employer matches your IRA or your 401k, oh, it's wonderful. If it's a bad year, sorry, you get nothing. Whatever goes into it, you put into it. So it's far time with these increases, what's happening. And anyway, I go back to when things were going well in the 90s. So they reduced the amount that the employer had to pay, and everything was fine because the cash flow was where it was supposed to be. However, in 2001, we lost 1/3 of the value because they were aiming for a 9%. Now, that was a little bit hard to make during the 90s. The inflation was whipped pretty well, and the investments, if you made 7%, you were fortunate. And everything above 9.5% went grabbed for the special fund. So normally, here's the stock market going like this, the highs and the lows. But if you skim the highs at 9.5, you don't have enough to fill in when the lows come. So here comes the low in 2001, we lose 1/3. How are we going to do about that? We raised the amount, the employer share went way up after 2001. And it stayed that way for a while, and we still weren't gaining. And we come along to 2009, well, we're hoping to recover, it drops again, almost another third. So we weren't gaining very well. It should be at about 7 or 8 billion now, and it's about 4 billion. So here it's short money. So we're saying, well, the money, it's time for the employees to step up. It's time for them to come up another 2%, and by raising them 2%, we save the 25%, the $46 million that the state was contributing to the employer share. So what was supposed to happen was the towns and cities should be held harmless at the same level. Of course, the governor made a speech about, we talk about we don't want to downshift to the town, we don't want them to upshift. But if the towns are all given 6% pay raises to the teachers in an economy that's going, when the private sector is cutting your pay, cutting your hours, and laying people off. But the public employees want pay raise, pay raise, pay raise. We gave 6% to the state employees. My school district gave 6% to the teachers in a bad year. So that would have increased the amount that would have had to be contributed by the employer share, because it's a percentage of your pay. So that's what the governor called upshifting. And so he said, we don't want upshifting, so he was going to eliminate that $46 million altogether. I was going to shift it to the employees by raising them all up, as you see, on the retirement proposed, teachers up to 7, police up to 11.5, fire up to 11.8, and the employers' figures were what went below. And then I found the one, after I had that all printed up in copies, the bottom figures on that page that showed you the percentage varied a little bit. So the employer share went down. The teachers are still at 7%, but now the employer goes down to 11.3, and on the police, the employer went down to 19.95, and for the fire it went down to 22.89. How did that happen? We decided they couldn't retire at age 45. Only one other state lets you retire at 45 is police and fire. Some of them let you do 20 years and retire, but then you might have to wait till age 55 to collect. So we're going to wait till age 50, and there's going to be a sliding scale for those that are coming up on retirement. It takes 3 years to get to 50-year retirement, but at that point, now all of a sudden, the employer share comes down. Plus, no more retiring at age 60, and then we worry about how much you're going to pay for your medical care until you're 65 and go on Medicare. So now you're going to retire at 65 if you're a teacher or a state employee. Those made a big difference by using those factors. So the police, fire, and teachers are all complaining about, oh, it's a new tax. Gee, I wish I had a tax. It made me put my money in a fund just for me. That'd be the kind of tax I'd love. The kind of money I've been paying in income taxes while I was an airline pilot. If somebody said, that's going to go in a fund for you for the rest of you. Oh, good. Not for all these other crazy programs I despise. So anyway, make sure people understand. Now, the reason I passed out this other page was that the Senate decided to do it differently. The bill in the House would have said, July 1st, you'll begin to pay this extra amount. We wanted to get rid of the board that was dominated by firemen, police, and teachers, and have one that was dominated by people that really looked, instead of what's in it for me, where's my gain, let's make the system work. We needed to replace that dominant employee group that was screwing the system up and has been for 10 or 15 years. We need to replace them with people that were looking at the survival of the fund. So those people were going to come in, but in the meantime, this group, even though they weren't supposed to, called a meeting and set a rate that caused a real problem. I saw, somebody sent me one from the Auburn newsletter. Last year, the contribution from the state for the town of Auburn, police, fire, and teachers, was about $17,000 for the whole year. So now that this system came out and we said the state isn't going to pay any more of the employer share, the town of Auburn gets a bill for $17,000 for the first month of July, because July We didn't have the money in yet. The system was in, the contribution hadn't gone up yet because the Senate decided to make it August 1st instead of July 1st. But then the Senate put in an extra $3.5 million to make up for that monthly loss. So that's what's in there by town in Belknap County. I had them do it by just the towns of Belknap County. It's all several pages of it. But it shows the piece that would have gone for that month. So some of your towns are going to call you up and say, especially your town manager, what's going on? We've got this bill for tens of thousands of dollars for this retirement system. Is, to say the least, hostile toward the changes we've made. And so they're taking revenge on the town, so you'll call us up and tell us we screwed up. You'd call them back and say, no, the retirement system screwed up. And if any town's paid this money, it's going to be treated as a credit. So going forward, that money better be going your total for the county or for the towns. I paid you so much, I only should have paid you this much. You're supposed to get the extra money from the employees, not from us. We're paying you the same roughly we paid last year, the same percentage, it's a lower percentage now because of the changes we made. Overall, this should save you some 60, overall for all the towns and cities, it's going to be a savings of about 60-some million a year. It's going to be more in 13 than it is in 12, and since it's a little bit below where it should be in 12, the $3.5 million has been put in the budget. And that's the contribution to each of your towns for each of those areas.
They tell them all the Democrats voted against the credit today.
Very good, yes. They voted against the $4 million that somebody has come up since and decided it really was a $4 million cost. So that's an important point to make for the budget situation. And the other one that really disturbs me, I don't have a printout, the hospitals. Oh, we have to lay off 100 people.
What a scam that is.
Yeah, it turns out
In by 5, out by 8.
some of them were empty slots. The same game we played. Oh, we're laying off 1,000 people in state government. Wait a minute, how many real people? Well, 750 were unfilled jobs. Well, that's not a layoff. But 250 we think we're going to lay off, and then we'll give them 6 months separation pay, and then we'll give them 90 days. Gee, what a vacation. But of course, you may not be able to get a job at the end of it, but maybe you'll delay and whatever. So here we read all these stories, every hospital of the 10. When we talked about the hospitals, and I'm looking at the one in my area, it's Exeter Hospital, which was so expensive that Anthem didn't even want to do business with. They're the highest priced place. Years ago on a committee, a study committee, there was a gentleman there that at the time there was a Blue Cross New Hampshire. He said, if one of you fell down on the spot, and at the time we're 6 miles from the Exeter Hospital, if one of you fell down on this spot and needed medical care, I could get a helicopter here, pick you up, take you to Boston, treat you, you recover, bring you back in a helicopter, and it would still cost less money than driving you over to Exeter Hospital. And you know, you go in Boston and there's 7 or 8 hospitals within a mile. They're very competitive. We have a certificate of need board that is dominated by the hospitals and make sure there's no competition in my catchment area, so I can cost whatever I want and nobody else can build another hospital here. If anybody tries, they'll have to come to the certificate of need board and they won't be allowed to build a hospital. Pease Air Force Base, perfectly good hospital. No, you're not allowed to use it. Portsmouth and Exeter got together and said, no, you can't have a hospital there. So it became a vote tech. But anyway, so a lot of stories, especially Elliott Hospital, talks about the 100 jobs that they lost. Maybe 200 were real, maybe 20 of them were real. At the meantime, they're opening an assisted living place where they're also looking to hire people. No mention of that in the whole story.
Did they open Riverbend to something around?
Yeah, River.
Emergency, immediate care.
Yeah, and they're opening that, they're opening immediate care, and they're opening that. I've got in a bill that a doctor asked me to put in, that he said that it costs 30 times more to be treated in the emergency room than it does just seeing a regular doctor. So the bill says if you're going to have an emergency room for so many hours a day, you're going to have an urgent care next to it. And if somebody comes in needs urgent care, that's where they go. Not to the emergency room with these huge bills. They don't care because they're not paying. So, and then we're hoping that managed care comes in so we can save ourselves a lot of emergency room trips by people who've never seen a doctor. So that's some of the other things you've got to let people know that is not such a true.
Isn't managed care supposed to kick in though?
Got some questions.
It's supposed to be October 15th. We're supposed to see a plan. And then October 28th, I think, we're set to meet as a fiscal committee to accept that plan. So here's another handout that I always like pie charts, and the LBA even calls these Weiler charts, because I always say, where's the pie charts? And so for a good understanding of the budget, there's just a couple of these. Sometimes they have as many as 6 in the package, but we'll simplify this. No, I got 2 pie charts and a bar graph.
Oh, wow.
The first page tells you this current budget that we voted in, and where the money is by source of funds. So you'll see what a big piece comes from federal funds. It's 30.2%. And other funds are 34.7%, but that also includes, of that $3 billion, $1 billion of it is the Education Trust Fund. Actually, it's $2 billion because this is a 2-year budget. And then general funds are this $2,687,000,000. That's the one we might have to save the $35 million from. The today's speech, I said, okay, if we have to cut $35 million out of $2.687 billion, that's 1.7%. Am I going to get all worked up and claim a program's going to be shut down? No. If it comes down to it where we don't have the revenue coming in, we'll send out a message to those places that are not exempt, such as you got to make your bond payments. You can't decide to stop paying your mortgage by 2%. No, I don't think the bank would like that. Neither would our bondholders. So we don't cut them, but many places we would cut 1.7%. So that's something we keep in mind. We put that bill in retain so we can keep working on it. And you'll see the other places where we have a dedicated fund. One of the important things about New Hampshire highways is we try not to take money away from the highway fund. We try to keep it for highways. When safety doesn't steal it, or the Lilac Commission, or the court, or 12 other places where they steal the highway fund.
So the Fire Academy and the Police Academy.
There you go, there you go. The Detective Bureau and so on. But at least a bigger share of it than other states goes to fixing those highways and bridges and plowing them. So that's a dedicated fund. Fish and Game is a dedicated fund. Again, pretty small. We leave it up to them to try to increase, and they keep claiming it's their search and rescue that's, we owe them money. But I look at their search and rescue, and it's about $40 million a quarter for the 110,000 we give them. Got to get the right scale here. 110,000 we give them for search and rescue, and they spend 35 to 40 million every quarter. And then I look, one quarter they're real busy. 26 rescues, 4 drowning recoveries, and all the overtime for the conservation officers and equipment and so on, $42 million. Here's the next quarter. 3 rescues, no drowning recoveries, and they spent 38,000. 42,000 and 30. What are you doing with this money? I think it's going to pay overtime for all the conservation officers. I don't think it's so much search and rescue, but unless I really get the auditors over there, which they only want to do it every 3 or 4 years, I can't prove it. So
The fish cops, you mean?
the fish cops, we call them conservation officers.
Fish cops.
We're here. No, we're not going to use slang here. So that's where. That's
You're on Granite Rock right now.
What?
You're on Granite Rock.
That's right. So federal funds are a big piece of it, but of course the federal funds also require us to do a lot of programs that we wouldn't otherwise do unless they gave us federal funds. Anywhere from 20 to 30 to 50 to 80% of the funds to fund a program that we might not otherwise want to do. So, and some of the programs are 100% funded, thankfully, employment security by federal funds. But they all have to be appropriated. They can't spend them without authority from the New Hampshire House, New Hampshire Senate, and the governor. Even if your operation is 100% federal funds, or in the case of a banking commission, it's all coming from the banks. You charge them all the money to pay for it. Insurance does the same. But if we don't appropriate it, you can't spend it. So those are the source of funds, and then the second page shows you where we appropriate them. And look at that lion's share going to health and social services. But of course, it includes a lot of things. A lot of programs under health and social services. Some for healthy people, like women, infant, children. All those programs for the indigent and so on. Programs you know all about. I don't have to tell you about it. Education is another big expenditure. That's probably the second biggest, 26%. General government takes in a lot of stuff that isn't covered. That's the legislature, the governor's office, and so on. Transportation, there's where your dedicated funds are getting spent on the roads, the highways, and so on. Resource protection and development, category 3, that's just the way it's categorized in the budget. And category 2, administration of justice and public protection. So that's the Attorney General, the state police, and so on, including the courts. So those are how we spend the money that we take in, and we break it down further. We split it up into 3 divisions. As was pointed out, we were going to have people here from the 3 divisions, but Tom didn't make it. Mary's here from Division 2, which takes in education, fish and game, and highways.
Safety.
And safety. And then Division 3 is all health and human services. Division 1 is everything else. So we split up the budget. They meet in those groups. I was very fortunate this year in my office. I was working on the big picture, which is where I came up with the increases for the retirement systems and trying to make sense of where we got the money to make up for what the governor was cutting. And I had about 67 of 70 years of experience helping me, which are some of the 100-odd years of experience that Governor Lynch has gotten rid of. Had about 33 years of Don Hill experience, many years working in the Department of Administrative Services, and about 10 or 12 years as the commissioner. 35, 36 years with Phil Blatsos. All those years in accounting and the Department of Revenue Administration. He was in most of the last 15, 18 years that I've worked with him. He was one of the top guys in the last 4 or 5 years as the commissioner. And Governor Lynch just let him go. Guys who really knew the inside and out, replaced them with people that I didn't think were nearly as qualified. So those guys came and met with me most days, and we sat down and went over the budget, and if I didn't have the information, they'd say, call him for this, call him for that. Get on the phone. This is the chairman of the finance committee. Send me all these. Okay, you get it. So that was pretty good, and I really appreciate those 2 gentlemen, and I'm grateful to them. I'm hoping that the next time if I do this again, they can come and help me. They were invaluable, telling me where to look, because these were the guys that used to hide stuff on me when I sit there on the other side of the table and ask them questions, so it was a big help. I remember what a total different story. Doug Scammon, years ago, I was chairman of Division 2, and we're talking about the highway administration and all this money they had in the treasury. They had $100 million, $105 million in there. And they put me on a committee. Gene Chandler was the speaker. He said, I want you to figure out what to do with this $25 million deficit on the highway fund. So I'm going through everything to do with the highway fund, and working with several people there, John Graham and Jim Rouse, and we're going over all sorts of things. And I said, look at this. There's $100 million in the treasury, $105 million. So I called up, it was Doug Scammon. He was the administrative chief then. And I said, Doug, what's this $105 million? Oh no, you can't touch that. That's for projects. Okay, what projects? Well, it's just a whole bunch of them. I said, we're only worried about these 2 years. I want to know if there's any projects that go beyond 2 years. Oh, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't think I'll get it. So I asked the legislative budget assistant, it was Jack Dianis at the time. I said, Jack, get me the aging on this. How many projects? How far out do they go? You know, I'm not worried about anything past 2 years. That's another budget. I want to balance this budget. Jack got put off for 6 or 8 months, and I finally put in my report, and I said, look, here's $105 million, here's a $25 million deficit. Whoops! Now there's $80 million here, and there's no deficit. Done. Oh, no, that's not right. You can't do that. You can't touch $105 million. Well, once I discovered it, and they were hiding it, the next year the governor took 35 million to help balance their budget. And then the budget after that, I think he took the rest. But what it was, so now Doug becomes the speaker and I'm the deputy, and so Doug finally sits down and tells me. Every time they finished a project, and it was like an 80-20, 80% federal and 20% state money, and if we came in early or on schedule, on budget, we got a little bonus. What do you do with this? We'll put it in this account. That was like 20 years accumulation of what do we do with this? Put it in the account. And many times we finished early. What do you do with the extra money? Put it in the account. So it was a long-term accumulation. I'm glad we had it for the last few budgets, but now we're looking pretty tight. We got a committee working on what can we do. And one of the things that one of them went on a website and found that we were fairly high in the performance of our system, but we're only number 27 in savings. And the one that operated the lowest per lane mile was North Dakota. Well, they got just as much snow as we do. But of course, they've got one plow truck can probably go 100 miles before he turns around. And there probably won't be anybody on the road and anybody in the way who's got a plow around.
Wind blows like hell.
So, it helps. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that we got to look into. Now, the last thing I'm going to pass out is the thing that comes out every month from the Department of Administrative Services. And those of us in finance and ways and means get a copy of it, and anybody else that would really want to see it can go and request it from Administrative Services. So this is the official word for the month of September. Now recall, this is only July, August, September. So this is only 3 months into the 24-month biennium. And it does show good news if you turn to the second page and go over to page 3, and you go over to the year-to-date comparison to plan, and you go over to total, and you come down to actual versus plan, and you see at the bottom there total receipts. Actual money shows us $15.1 million ahead of plan. Now that's a pretty good
Croc TV.